look, you've got one shot here. You've got one shot here. And if you are holding yourself back and you are muting yourself and you are letting doubt dictate what you do, you are going to end up living a life for somebody else and not for yourself. And you are worthy of living the kind of life that excites you. You're worthy of living the kind of life that fulfills you. You're worthy of living the kind of life that makes you feel alive. And you first and I'll say this because I wrote a song about, my first song is called Somebody. And the song ends with the words, you are somebody, you matter, you are enough. I often do this in rooms. I was just in a room earlier this week, about 1,000 people, and I had everyone put a hand on their heart. And I said, I want you to repeat after me, and I want you to think about the most insecure, unworthy version of yourself. And I want you to speak these words to that person. I want you to say, I am somebody, I matter, and I am enough.
Rachel, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing so great. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today.
I love like the patterns, the earrings, and then like I feel like the earrings are matching the artwork behind you, the peacock.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with peacocks. I have like 57 of them in some form all over my house.
What?
My friend's daughter counted them one day.
Fun fact, you have peacocks all over you. Whoa. What? I already know, I feel like we don't know each other that well, but I feel like I know you well enough that you've linked that back to some of the work that you do in some way about spreading the feathers, or I don't know. You've got some angle, right? Tell us the story about the peacock. I know you've already got some, like, this is a story of what this represents.
Well, I mean, for me, my creature was like butterflies for a while, because it's like the caterpillar turns into the butterfly.
Oh,
and
yeah.
out and expands.
Yeah.
But then I just started seeing peacocks like everywhere I went. Like they showed up at our honeymoon. They showed up at a vacation a year later. They just kept showing up. And the thing that I like about peacocks, like I have one right here. It's a paperweight.
You're not even joking, are you? I love it. You're the peacock lady now. So like whenever, so now everyone just buys you gifts whenever they see a peacock.
They're bold. Like they're bold, they're expansive, they let themselves show up and be seen. They're not hiding. Like they are unmuted. If I could if an animal could embody what it means to be unmuted, to me it would be a peacock.
I knew it. So when I was thinking about and we're going to talk about unmuting yourself and what that means, that is a perfect expression of that. So I'm so happy I just randomly said that now while seeing that, because normally when I just pick on people's artwork behind them or things in the room, there's never normally that deep of a story, but I knew there would be one. With you. That's a crazy way to start the episode. But so for everyone listening, tell them a little bit more about you personally and your background sort of to the work that you do now.
Yeah, so I spent the first 13 years of my career working in employee benefits consulting. So I've worked with HR leaders my whole career. And I was the director of well-being and employee engagement. And I started there as an intern. Like actually, I'm proof of what happens if you take good care of your interns, because I stayed there.
Where was that? What company?
It was called what's now called Alera Group. So they're a benefits consulting firm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I started as an intern for 4 years in college, and then I worked there full time. And I was very entrepreneurial, so that I basically got to map my own career path. And I started as an intern, and I left as the national director of well-being and employee engagement.
Wow. So you was there. How long was that? Did you say you was there for?
13 years. I was there like after college full time. And then I've been on my own now, speaking and training full time for 5 years with my own business.
So tell us a bit more about that. What was the inspiration behind that? But what's the specific focus that you have?
Yeah. So for me, I believe that what I'm here to do is to help people shift from a place of fear and doubt and insecurity and silencing themselves and holding themselves back to a place of possibility, a place of momentum, a place of confidence and courage, so that they show up in their work and their life in a way that's fulfilling, in a way that they can have greater influence, they can have greater impact, and they can have less regret. And I think there's just too many people that are walking around and they're feeling stuck in some way. They're holding something about themselves back, and it's preventing them from doing what they're meant to do in the world. And so I get to be like a catalyst, a soothing gut punch. Somebody once called it a soothing gut punch to like wake people up.
Don't name your book that. The soothing gut punch. Yeah. What made you come to the realization? Is this something that you experienced personally, that you kind of unlocked and said, wow, you know, I was holding myself back for so long? Like, what was the aha moment that you were like, this is what I need to do, this is my why, you know?
Well, for me, I'd say a big catalyst was when I burned out. So when I was the director of well-being at my company. A year earlier, I had been recognized by this organization called the Wellness Council of America, WellCOA, as the #1 health promotion professional in the United States. So there were 250 some people that were, you know, part of this group, and I ended up winning this whole contest. And I felt like, oh, this is the coolest, best thing that could have happened, because now I'm, you know, they said I'm the best at what I do. And then a year later, I was sick on my couch and burned out with Epstein-Barr virus, which is an acute form of mono, and I lost my voice for a period of time. I had no energy. I would sleep for 12 hours a night and not feel rested. I was terrified to tell anybody because I was the wellness person. And I'm like, the wellness person can't be the sickest person at the company.
Crazy. Yeah. And it's, you know, we do a global wellbeing summit every year, and I speak to benefits leaders every year, and some of them are the ones that are most burned out.
Oh, the most. HR.
Because you're dealing with everyone else's, you know, and your own. There's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot, right, to take on. And you're right. Who do you go to when you have a problem? Who does HR or well-being go to when they have an issue? They're supposed to be the people that people go to, right? So
yeah,
it's something that people don't talk about enough, and they do hold it to them, keep it to themselves. Yeah.
Well, I think the other problem with HR, that I see in HR, not a problem with HR, but what I see in all the HR leaders I've worked with and talked to, is that we just go to what are the tactical solutions? Like, how can we prevent burnout? Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Make sure, duh. Nobody needs to be told that again. What I discovered through my own experience, through my own journey of burnout and kind of coming out of that and really having honestly, this dark night of the soul, truly, was the recognition that burnout, I believe, is often rooted deeply in a lack of self-worth.
Interesting.
That if we just prove ourselves enough, if we just impress enough people, if we just help enough people, if we're useful enough, then we'll feel okay. Then we'll feel successful. And the truth is, as long as we're trying to do that,
right? I am that person. Yeah, I mean, I grew up pretty poor, didn't have much, so I kind of had this chip on my shoulder that I have to prove to my family, friends, my wife that I am enough. I can be enough. Mm-hmm. And I was always chasing the next pay rise, the next deal, the next promotion. And whenever I achieved each of those things, I was still miserable. And I'm like, why am I miserable? I was having anxiety attacks, and I definitely had burnout. And you're right, a lot of that was in the chase of approval and recognition beyond myself, which is so unhealthy because it's never ending. To do that. And then when I kind of shifted my purpose to creating a better life for Robin, my daughter, and my wife, and putting myself first, me before everyone, in order for me to be the best dad, the best husband, the best friend, I have to take care of Chris.
Yes.
Then I can take care of everyone else and be the best version of myself. But I learned that the hard way, like you, and it came in the form of panic attacks, anxiety, severe anxiety, wasn't sleeping, wasn't taking care of myself, and it just came to a halt where I was like, I can't do this anymore as well. But you're right. It's interesting perspective.
Yeah. And I think it affects a lot of people, and people don't talk about it, and nobody talks about what's at the root of it. You know, for me, I went through this process. There's a really great book called Immunity to Change. And it's by Lisa Leahy and Bob Keegan out of Harvard University. And I went through a process with a coach right in the wake of that burnout. And we had to we walked through a series of questions and, what are the ways you're holding yourself back? What's how are you getting in your own way? How are you sabotaging yourself? And then beneath all of it was what they call the big assumption. There's a big assumption that's at the root of why we're not doing the things we say we want to do. And when we were getting at the core, kind of the statement of what my big assumption was, it was basically that I believe that if I have to be impressive and have to be the best, and if I'm not, then I'm nobody. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. And who would love a nobody?
Yeah, but and also your so many people's jobs and professions are ingrained in their self-worth. So you see
Yes.
it, let me give you an example. You know, when you see like athletes retire,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or actors retire. Many of them have issues, mental health, alcohol, drugs, because their whole life is represented in being this. I am a professional ex sports athlete, and then everything, their self worth is wrapped up in that. And then when they retire, they're like, they can't deal with it, right?
Yeah,
They don't know what to do. You see that happen all the time. So
I
now I've
do.
just kind of got to the point where I'm like, I've separated that out,
Mm.
and I am me. And I'm
Yeah.
not defined by a job title. I'm not defined by how much money I make or what car I drive or that. That's not my measurement of success anymore. And
Mm.
mine, I went through a similar process with my coach, Chester Elton. And one of the realizations for me was just like there was like an inner child of a voice of just being scared of being poor again, because I grew up very
Mm-hmm.
poor. So I
Mm-hmm.
had this fear that it's all going to fall apart at some point. I'm going to be poor again. And so, like, no matter how much money I was making or progressing, I couldn't get rid of that fear. And I didn't
Yeah.
even know that I was even doing that, obviously, at the time. But as well, so I was trying to, like, I still have it now, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
No matter how
Yeah.
successful we get, my wife's always like, enough's never going to be enough for you. But what I have done is created boundaries.
Mm.
And there's a couple of hours blocked every evening where I just spend time with my daughter. Not you can't book calls during that time, right? There's an hour. I even schedule lunch because otherwise I used to just not eat and work the entire day. Like that's how unhealthy it was.
Mm-hmm.
I schedule gym, right? Like just schedule everything, because if I leave it up to my subconscious mind,
Mm-hmm.
it's not happening.
It's not. It's not.
It's not happening.
Well, I can give you a question that would, I think, be helpful for everyone listening that I use as kind of like a filter for bound because you mentioned setting boundaries, which is one of the things that from what I've heard from HR leaders, because I speak a lot at events that HR leaders come to, and I ask them, what are the ways you're holding yourself back and how are you muting yourself? And one of them is around boundary setting. So one of my favorite questions to ask people, to ask themselves when you're trying to make a decision about what to prioritize is if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to that matters to me and to those I care about?
Mm, yeah, I love that one.
It's a filter, right? It's like, be honest with yourself. I mean, I've not gone to networking events. I've not gone to certain things because I've said, if I say yes to this, here's the chain of consequences that happen. If I say yes to that project when I'm already drowning, what am I saying no to? Sleep, sanity, being nice to people. We have to ask ourselves, we have to take responsibility for the yeses that we have. And for a long time, I didn't. I was like, my job's doing this to me. They're putting all this pressure on me and they have these expectations that are unreasonable. Have you ever spoken up about that, Rachel? And the
Yeah,
truth was that I had not.
I think one of the biggest lessons I learned not long, probably the last couple of years, is to learn to say no more often.
Mm-hmm.
I think we want to please people, we want to try and be the hero, but you, at what cost, to your point,
Yeah.
right? Where
Yeah.
it's like even today I had a really important call come across a email that, and someone wanted to speak this evening, and it's a lot of money on the
Mm.
line, and I was like, you know what, that can wait until tomorrow. I'm going trick or treating tonight with my daughter. And that's literally the conversation I had with Lisa, my EA. I was like, no. She was like, what is this? It's this incredible opportunity. I'm like, in the past, I'd have like just dropped. I was like, no.
No.
One more day's fine. You can wait a day.
Yeah.
I want to go trick or treating with Robin because I promised her this morning when I left the house I would be home, and she asked me,
Yeah.
"Can you come?" I'm going to be there. Whereas in the past,
Yeah.
I would have not made that decision
No.
to do that as well. So it's okay to say no.
Yes.
Tell
Yes.
what is self silencing,
Yeah.
and why do we do it?
So I learned about this from there's a psychology professor named Dana Jack. And so when we self silence, we don't speak up and express what we think or want or need or feel. And a lot of us, we do this for one of the main reasons is because of fear. So we have a fear of failure, judgment, rejection, not being good enough, being seen as inadequate or incompetent, a fear of rocking the boat, a fear of causing conflict, a fear of confrontation. And because of all of those fears, we just decide, you know what? It's just safer to be quiet than to take the risk of putting myself out there and having any one of those things happen. So I'm just going to sit here and silently be resentful, burned out, overwhelmed, and frustrated and unfulfilled and full of regret because I'm letting this fear lead the way. And so I think one of the reasons, especially in HR, why we do this is because, I mean, you think about it, people get into HR because they like helping other people. So I like to, help other people and train other people and grow other people and help the organization be better. And I think a lot of times it's like we forget that, well, as an HR leader at an organization, you're also one of the employees. And so you also should benefit from all of the things that you are doing and not just be the person that's advocating for everybody else, but to turn those skills on yourself and advocate for yourself as much as you're advocating for others.
Yeah. From a practical point of view, how do we start to turn a corner on that? What are some things that people can do to recognize when they're in that moment, in those moments, or and create a system to? Because I'm assuming this is something that is an ongoing development. Like I just said, I always have that fear. It's not going to go away. The voice comes back. What's your advice?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm really big on curiosity. I think curiosity is one of the most important traits of any leader. And so I think we don't often have enough curiosity about ourselves. So I would start by inviting them to ask themselves a few questions initially to like make this personal for them. So one would be that question of what's one way that you are currently silencing, doubting, or holding yourself back that you'd like to overcome. So to own that, just pick one, because you could pick 50 and you won't do any of them. So what's the one that is the greatest pain point for you possibly? Or even what's the one that feels the easiest for you? Like some people like to do the hardest thing and some people like to build momentum by doing something they feel like they can have success in. So what's one way you're doing that? What is the cost of that? So if you continue to do that, let's drag this out a year, 3 years, 5 years. If you continue to silence or hold yourself back or mute yourself in that way or doubt yourself in that way, what is the cost? What are the negative consequences that are going to happen if you continue to do that?
Give me an example of that. Give me an example of what that would look like.
Sure. So if I am silencing myself, I'm not asking for what I'm worth. All right. What are the costs of that? So there's like a literal financial cost of I'm not able to live the life that I want to live because I don't have the financial resources I want to live. I start to build resentment because often in HR, for instance, if you're working in recruiting, you're seeing other people's salaries. And you can become more resentful because you're like, well, this person's getting paid that and I'm getting paid this. And then there can be that resentment that builds. And when people show up, when people have resentment that they're carrying inside because they're silencing a deep need that they have that they're afraid to communicate, that often comes out in our interactions with other people in negative ways. And then frankly, I mean, can I give you a specific example of something that happened with an HR leader in recruiting? A way she's unmuted herself. So I spoke at the National SHRM conference. This was 2 years ago. And a woman reached out to me afterwards and said that she took a pay cut to work in recruiting in the insurance industry from whatever she had been doing before. And something that I shared with them, I gave them a script that they could use to ask for a comp adjustment. And I said, you're not asking for a raise. So I've learned this from my dad, who's used to teach. He's taught some negotiating. So I learned it from him and I used it in my corporate job. So here's the prompt. Instead of going to your boss and asking for a raise, you say, schedule a time to meet with them. You say, I would like to talk about how we can adjust my compensation to better reflect my increased value and contributions. I would like to be at X number by Y date. Is that possible here? And then you stop talking. And you sit on your hands and you bite your tongue and you don't over-explain it and you don't oversell it. And you just wait to see what they say, because whatever they say, that's helpful information. If they say, no, that's not possible here. All right, well, maybe I need to go somewhere where we have a value alignment. Or if they say, that's possible here, here's what needs to happen. Now you have a path forward, as opposed to sitting there and being resentful. So she left that conference. This was in June of 2023. She emailed her boss within 4 to 6 weeks because she said, I realized, because they only do annual pay bumps, like they have a bands, right? Mm-hmm. And so she would have had to wait till March to get a bump. But she realized, she said, I'm already doing all of the things that are part of that next band. Mm-hmm. And she was just going to wait and sit on it. But instead, she emailed her boss with the subject line, job grade consideration request. And she just copied and pasted the wording that I gave her and just filled in the blanks. And she said, based on what I've seen, you know, I'm already fulfilling the requirements of this next level. And before she sent it to her boss, she sent it to a friend of hers who worked in HR. And she was like, is this too harsh? I've never been so direct. Like I'm so afraid of being this direct. I want to be considerate.
That's perfect. Self-silencing, right? Perfect example, right? Of people just,
right.
Yeah. Wow.
Just not doing. And then her boss wrote her back within 2 weeks. Her boss wrote her back and she got the pay bump within 2 weeks that she was going to have to wait 7 months for, which was several $1,000s more. And she was like, yeah, she was like, so I didn't even know I could do this. I didn't know I was the kind of, she said, I've never asked for a comp adjustment in my career. I didn't know I was the kind of person that could do this, and it really wasn't that hard.
And the thing is, the worst case scenario, but again, it goes back to your point earlier, the worst case scenario is they say no, but then you have that fear of rejection and that fear of, you know, which comes back again, like, oh, what if I ask and they say no, right? And then people just don't take the opportunity. I had a similar experience when I was got into sales. I was like 22, 23, and I was doing about 4 times the sales of the average salesperson, and I felt really annoyed that I knew I was getting paid the same. And I remember going into I didn't do it so well like you, by the way. I literally went in and said, hey, I'm doing 4 times more sales than the team, I want more money. It was definitely not a great strategy, but I got it. I got the pay rise that I asked for, but I was told next time, don't come in like this, Chris, and got some got some very well received feedback about how you do that. But I think being in sales where you're used to getting rejected every day and you hear no, right? And you kind of have to separate your emotions. And, you know, they're not saying no to me, Chris Rainey, personally. You kind of build a bit of resilience around like jumping into the deep end and just trying. Like when I launched this show, everyone was like, you're a salesperson. Now you're launching a podcast about HR. You've never ever done a day ever in HR. And now you're the guy that interviews the top people in HR, right? Who are you to think that you can do that? And I just kind of got to the point in my life where I'm like, I just don't care about other people's opinions, to your point, or like, I'm not waiting for someone to give me permission.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm tired. I was tired. I think that's because I was in the same job for 10 years. And I remember staring at my boss like, are you going to promote me, or are you ever going to leave? Or, you know, and I'm like, is your boss ever going to leave so you can move up? And then I would like try to move in other parts of the company. And I was told no. And I was like, I am tired of waiting for someone else to give me permission to succeed and grow and develop, you know? And I was just like, it took 10 years though to get to that point.
But you did it. Like, you took initiative. I think that's the other thing, is taking initiative, because so often people are waiting for permission. They're like, I need to be asked to do this. And I think there's 2 things for us to consider when it comes to unmuting ourselves and taking initiative. I think one is to think about, there's 3 questions I've had people think about for themselves of, where do I want to go? So when you think about your future, like, what do you want to be doing? Who do you want to be doing it with? What do you want your day to look like? So where do you want to go? Kind of title do you aspire to, if that's a thing? You know, how do you need to grow to get there? So what are the trainings or certifications or coaching or mentoring or experience that you need to be able to grow into where you want to go? And then who do you need to know? So who are the people that you need to connect with that are maybe already doing the thing you want to be doing, or that have insight on how to do that? And how can you take intentional steps to connect with them so that you're not waiting around for somebody else to direct your career, but that you're clear on where people that are clear on where they want to go are more likely to get there than people that are sitting around waiting for direction from someone else.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think the second one, I want to give like a little bit of a warning to people, because I see this all the time. You don't have to wait until you have a business plan or a certification or a diploma to get, like, I just started an AI company, and I'm a CEO and founder of an AI business. I've never done anything like that in my life, right? And too many people, if you look at the people that are successful, especially entrepreneurs, they jump out the airplane and build the parachute on the way down. You learn whereas so many people I speak to, they feel like, oh, I'm not ready yet. The truth is, nobody knows what they're doing.
No.
The difference is they just get started and start doing and learn a long way while you think about it, or have the perfect business plan written out, and all of these, courses and stuff that you have to go on. Yes, you need to do that, but you need to be doing it at the same time. Just get started. Then again comes back to that fear. I can't do it. Well, of course you can't do it. You've never done it. Put the reps in. Like the amount of times that we did 150 episodes of the podcast before a single person listened.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Months and months of editing and recording and shows, and no one was listening. It's demoralizing, right? But I learned a lot. Every day I got better at interviewing, at editing, at building the audience, finding the right guests. Like if I waited until I had the perfect plan, it never would have happened.
It wouldn't. And there's something energizing about doing it without the full plan. Because HR, think about it. A lot of times when you're in HR, you're risk averse because you're the regulator, you're the rule upholder, you're the one that's, if you think about it, you deal with compliance. So much about HR is follow the rules, stay in the box, don't take a risk. So I think one of the hard things is people that are really good at doing the technical logistical aspects of HR are not necessarily wired to be risk takers because it's potentially threatening in some way to them being good at the other thing. But I do think they can coexist. So I think it's a matter of asking yourself what might be possible. Like what becomes possible if I say yes to this thing before I feel ready, and to recognize that, like with imposter syndrome, a lot of HR leaders have said, I feel like I'm an imposter, I'm a fraud. I like to tell people that kind of the story you just shared.
Everyone does.
Everyone does, but like you're not an imposter. I like to say you're not an imposter. You're in process.
Yeah, I love that. No, that's. I kind of like have the whole sort of act as if, right? I act as if I'm already a very successful CEO of an AI startup, and I embody every part of that, and I'm learning on the way, right? Yes. But I already envision, picture, affirmations, everything in me is like, I already imagining, like, I even like sit awake at night, it's pretty sad to say on the podcast, and imagine what it looks like, the success, where I'm going, the journey, the failures, and fully visualize that for myself and the team and the business. And you kind of have to, because otherwise the alternative is you're going to sit there thinking about all the things that are going to go wrong, and what people are going to think about you if you fail, and all of those. And am I enough?
Yeah.
Like that's the alternative of doing that. And by the way, for everyone, it is going to be hard. You are going to fail. There's going to be days you don't want to get up and do this stuff. That's part of the process.
Yeah. But you have to let yourself imagine. I mean, like one of my favorite authors is Daniel Pink.
Yeah.
Right. So he wrote a book called The Power of Regret a couple years ago that I just absolutely loved. And they did research. They've now surveyed over 26,000 people across 134 countries. And they found that one of the top 4 regrets that people have in their lives, this is directly related to this conversation, are what they call boldness regrets. So if only I'd taken the chance, if only I'd started that business, if only I'd said yes, if only I'd put myself out there, if only I'd bet on myself, if only I'd believed in myself, if only I asked for that raise. Like stop having it is your choice to have if only regrets.
Yeah, like you got to flip the lens of what is the cost of not doing it. That's the way I always look at things now. Whereas like in the beginning of my career, I was like, oh, what's the cost of doing it? And then you kind of neg it out, like probably, or you find all the reasons. You'll convince yourself all the reasons why you shouldn't, right? Even when I started the company, every single person I told, and I think I would never have told them actually going back, told me every reason why I shouldn't do it. Oh, Chris, you know that only 1 in 100 startups succeed, right? Oh, Chris, and I had all of those, and I was like, but what if I do?
Yeah, you do.
What? And also, what if I don't, right? What's the opportunity cost of me just staying in the company? And I had a conversation with my wife one time in the kitchen, like literally just like making dinner, and she was like, I don't want you to, like, she's like, I know it's going to be hard on our family. We're going to have to make financial sacrifices. We just bought a house. We had a baby on the way. There's no good time of doing it. She was like, let's just do it. We'll figure it out. Because I don't want you to look back and be like, you didn't do it. Right. And then it was in that moment where I was like, let's do it.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had to make sacrifices. We had to take actually, and sometimes you have to take a couple of steps back to take a couple of steps forward. That's
Sure.
another thing. A lot of people aren't willing to make. I went from a couple 100K salary to 30K.
Yeah.
That is in London, almost you can't even live on
Yeah.
that, Shane and I. So within the first 3 months, we had to make money. Otherwise, we had to go and get a job again. So we had no choice.
Yes.
Literally, when you have got no choice and the back's against the wall, you'd be amazed at what you can do because you just have no choice
You have to.
but to do it. So, but I understand it's not as always clean and cut that. You know, people have mortgages, their families. You know, we call it sort of the golden handcuffs
Yeah,
in companies, right? And it's really hard to do that. So let's not pretend that that doesn't exist because that's really tough.
And I think I think something to think about though is like, even if you're in a role where you feel that you're like, I'm not in a position where I can leave right now, because I would imagine many people listening might feel that way.
Yeah.
What is the aspect of your work that makes you feel most alive, and how can you do more of that thing? Like you don't have to. It doesn't have to be the only solution is leave. It could be the solution is you speak up. There was a woman, a project manager. I was doing some work with a global consulting firm a few years ago, and I spoke to their managers, and a woman reached out to me afterwards who had been in the room, and she said there was a question you asked us during the session that I brought back and talked to my partner about. She said, I'm a single mom. I got to travel for work back and forth, and it's exhausting. But she said this question you asked prompted me to have a conversation with my boss that I really needed to have because I've been feeling like really exhausted. And the question was, who gets the best of you and who gets the rest of you? And
I love that, by the way. That's great.
Well, I feel like you're living it out by even the example you shared about trick or treating.
Is that an original? You need to figure that out because that is a really good. I love that. If that's a you quote right there, you need to put that on LinkedIn with like a picture of you with a quote. You know, like what everyone does right now. Yeah. I love that. That is such a great way of putting it.
Well, you know, there's a guy named Simon Bailey, who is somebody that I had learned from a few years ago, was another speaker, and he was sharing a story about how he ended up getting divorced because he had prioritized his career so much.
Happens all the time, yeah.
You know, didn't like the kind of person that he was and how he was showing up. And so he framed it as, you know, my daughter got my family got the rest of me instead of the best of me. So he framed it that way. And then I flipped it into a question. So it's who gets the best of you and who gets the rest of you? Because when we ask ourselves that, it's different to hear it as a question than as a statement.
Yeah.
Because it makes it personal.
Yeah. One of the hardest things that I got that was said to me was by Chester, my coach. And I was talking about, you know, I have to do this because of the company and I couldn't do that because of the company. I was making up all these excuses, right? And he looked at me dead straight in my eyes and said to me, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was along the lines of, no amount of success in business makes up for failure in your home. And it was just silence. So, right, that was it, right? Yeah. No amount of success in business makes up for failure at home. Yeah. Then that really struck a chord with me. And I was like, wow. I'm making all of these excuses of the reason I'm doing it for my family, but I'm then not spending time with my family, right? I'm doing this to make the lives of Natasha and I better, but what's the point if I'm not actually present to enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
So I was using it as the excuse, and it was just like a hard moment, right? To like go, okay. So yeah, I'll never forget that. That was hard to hear, but I needed to. I really needed to hear that in the moment.
And admit that, you know,
because it's and admit that it was. Yeah, who was I kidding? Exactly. A lot of us have these excuses of why we do these things, but you know, are you really doing it? Is it what? Yeah, because I definitely don't want them to get the rest of me. I want them to get the best of me. You know, because that's why I'm doing it. That's my why. Of why I'm doing it in the first place. As well. Is this something that you see people have at all stages in their career, or is it more so in the later in the career, or is it just really like a broad like?
It's across the board. I mean, I think we make the assumption that someone later in their career they must not doubt themselves anymore. Or that person seems confident.
Yeah.
They've been a CHRO for 15 years. I mean, I remember at one point, one of the companies I was working with talking to somebody who was a VP. And I remember when she opened up to me and she said, Rachel, she's like, I didn't go to college. And I am afraid that every day someone's looking over my shoulder, trying to find something I did wrong, to realize that I do not belong in this spot and that they're going to kick me out. She's like, every day, I'm just waiting for someone to basically realize that I don't belong here, that I'm a fraud, that I'm an imposter because I didn't go to college. And everyone has their own version of that, because I didn't go to college, because I don't have this credential, because I don't know this person, because I haven't worked at a prestigious company, because I'm not making X amount of money. We have all of these reasons that we tell ourselves are that we allow basically to hold us back. And other people aren't thinking about those things the way that we think they are. They're just not.
Yeah, no one cares. Like it's that, and that's the sort of that's actually one of the like breakthrough moments with me. I was like, no one actually gives a shit, or sorry to swear, that and cares about that and is focusing on that. You are, right? It's why you see like this sort of keeping up appearances nature on social media. Like everyone feels like they need to show the best version of themselves on LinkedIn and on Instagram, and shows like the glossy front version. Don't kid yourself. No one cares. No one cares but you. So like, and that's why I kind of realized as well, like, no one cares. Like no one's, if you think people are paying that close attention to you and what you're doing and everything, you kind of like, I was the same, by the way. Like I didn't go to school, so I don't have any formal education. I'm dyslexic. I hid that all. Shane, even now, my co-founder, still helps me write contracts because it's something I'm like, it's just not a strong point for me. Help me structure this, write the contract. We literally just did one before this call as well, but now I kind of lean into it. It's not my strength. So like, ask me to be creative and sell and do other things and build product. That's kind of where I accelerate, right? And we did a similar thing you mentioned earlier, by the way. We couple years into the company, we were just exhausted, and we sat down and wrote a list of all the things that give us energy and all the things that take away energy that we do as founders. And we realized that so many of the things that was taking away his energy, I was like, I love that. And vice versa. And I was like, why are we doing why are we doing all of these things, right? And even with travel, like there's a point where I said, hey, like I have a daughter now. I want to be a bit more present, so like I don't want to travel as much as I used to. And we actually shuffled the business to accommodate for that as well. And when we did that, we like 4-5x our revenue, because all of a sudden I was running in one direction in sales, marketing, creative, and I'm like just full of energy doing that, being on camera. Shane used to also be on camera back in the day, and he hated it. He didn't enjoy selling. He didn't enjoy any of the things that I love, basically. And but he wants to be behind the foundation of the company, the operations, finance, making sure that basically taking my crazy ideas and bringing them to life. Whereas we had a mix of all of that, and it was just a mess. Before it took us 3 years to have that. That's one simple conversation. And do you know what we realized? What? We didn't want to tell each other because we was worried about what each other would think. To your point. So common. How silly is that? Yeah, it's like, I don't want to rock the, what if what are they going to think of me? And again, worst case scenario. So what is the worst case scenario of what they could think of you? And then you would have to then deal with that. But it's better than both of you harboring these fears independently. And not asking each other for help. Yeah. It's kind of crazy. And we're like best friends, co-founders, know each other forever. And even then we're like, I don't want Shane to feel less, see me as less than, or, or vice versa as well. So we encourage anyone listening right now, have that conversation with your team. Like even a simple one of sitting down, to your point, like, what are the things that give you, how did you put it? I just say, what gives you energy? What takes away energy? You put it a lot better earlier. Oh, yeah. I mean, what is something that makes you feel alive? Yeah. Like what is about your work? But for my former company, we actually had language around this. And I did this when I was in my mid-20s.
it was borrowed from other people, but I forget who the source is. But the question was, what are your energy vampires? So what are the things that suck the life out of you?
I love that because you put a good branding behind it. People will remember it. That's great.
Yeah. Like, what are your energy vampires? And then they didn't have a more creative name for this, but what are your highest payoff activities, they call them? But what are the things that you do that uniquely contribute, that bring value to others, that you also enjoy doing? And so I mean, I started making those lists in my mid-20s, and I would go to my boss, who was the CFO,
I wish I
and
did
be
that
like,
back then. Yeah.
I'm glad I did. Well, I needed to, especially after I burned out. I was like, so this needs to come off my plate. And again, we're afraid they'll say no, but even if they say no, that gives you really good information to know what to do next, whether you can stay there or whether you should look for something somewhere else.
Where can, like, this is all well and good us saying this, but where do people find the courage, the strength to then do that? Because in doing so, you open up the vulnerability, right?
Sure.
The scary, all those things. So all of a sudden now you're there, right? How do people get to that point?
Yeah. Well, I think a couple things. There's again, questions, power of curiosity that they can ask themselves and the people in their life to give them more insight into what they do well. Because a lot of times when we lack confidence ourselves, we need to let other people be a mirror for us, because I like to say that we are blind to our own brilliance. And so we don't often necessarily see the things that are best in us that other people might see right away, because it's just natural. I just do that. That's not a thing. So there were two questions. I was meeting with actually an HR leader a couple of years ago, and she was going through a coaching program. And there were two questions she asked me. We sat down outside of a Starbucks, and she said, I want you to make a list of like 8 to 10 people. And I want you to ask them these two questions. What shows up when I do? What qualities do I bring into a room?
Oh, I love I love both of them, but the first one, what shows up when I do?
Yeah. What shows? And I couldn't explain it. So she's like, you do not over explain it. You just say, I have two questions for you. What shows up when I do? And I was terrified, Chris, because I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I don't know. I show up as an anxious, overbearing, perfectionistic, bossy, I had in my mind.
You were straight to the negative. I love it. I love we default straight to like,
I'm like, these are the things I hope people don't, that my insecurities, whatever. And I asked like 18 people those questions, and I tallied all their responses. And this happened a year after I burned out. So I was at this place of recalibrating my identity, frankly. And the kind of things that people said were the kind of things I, like in the deepest part of myself, hoped people saw and hoped that they might say, but didn't imagine they would. So they said, like, you bring a calming presence and an excited energy. You're comforting, disarming, authentic, genuine, real, funny. Like, you make me feel like I can do it. Some people gave phrases. And I'm reading these things over and over and over again. And our tendency is to push it away. Our tendency is somebody says something affirming about us, and for whatever reason, past trauma, things other people have told us about ourselves, our tendency is immediately to put up a wall and to find all the reasons why whatever they said is not true.
Yeah, like we said earlier. Yeah.
Right? It's like, how do I counter? Well, here's why I'm not that thing you said I am. Oh, here's why I'm not.
We're not great as human beings, are we, at taking compliments or positives? This is a weird, I'd love to understand the psychology behind that a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think part of it is we're told from the time we're little, don't toot your own horn, let your work speak for itself. And so that gets ingrained in us from the time we're little. And we're told that if
true.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of almost been branded as arrogance, but there's a very difference between arrogance and confidence and belief in yourself. And I've had friends and family say to me in the past, like, "Oh, I've come across that way." I'm like, "No, I'm not accepting anything." Like the sort of and people have heard me talk about this on the show before, the sort of conforming to the status quo and sort of being a victim of the circumstances that I was born into, right, or grew up in. I'm like, no, I'm not. And people are like, oh, and I've always had that from even friends, even like my family have said that. And I'm like, but I refuse to let that play a part. You know, all I can do is control the controllables. Everything outside of that, I'm not. It doesn't affect me. Like, I just control my controllables. And if it's out of my control, then forget about it. It's just like don't get upset about it. But yeah,
Yeah. You
I
can't
love that.
control it.
Yeah, yeah. Like you see it again. You see it with like again highly successful people or athletes.
Mm-hmm.
They are very they're always very arrogant. No, they're not. It's just that's the winning mindset they have to have. If you walk into I watch MMA. If you walk into an MMA fight thinking you're going to lose, very unlikely you're going to win.
Yeah.
You know, like honestly, you have to go into it. Even sometimes when I like deep down don't even believe it, I still kind of like the affirmations, you know, put it out there, project it into the universe, and going with the assumption, because what's the alternative of that? You know?
No, it's very true. And we're afraid. I mean, one of my favorite phrases that I heard, Adam Grant's another favorite author of mine,
he's
and like
great.
what you just said about like arrogance, confidence, he talks about, I love the way he frames it. He calls it confident humility.
Oh, great. Of course he has an amazing way of saying it. That's why I'm not Adam Grant. Confidence. Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is. You know, you have self-assurance in what you do well because you've taken the time to ask, or you've asked people. Like another question people can ask people around them is, tell me about a time when you've seen me at my best. Like what showed up? The time you saw me at my best, what showed up? Document their responses. Make a list, write a new narrative. Say, when I show up at my best, in the words of other people, this is how I show up. And I think we can start to internalize these things, but we have to make the choice to start asking, because so much of the vulnerability that you mentioned is very vulnerable. I think the thing that fundamentally gives us courage is a sense of our own worthiness. And a lot of people have grown up, a lot of things from childhood, things we've talked about a little bit here today, that have caused people to not feel worthy.
Yeah.
And some people have been through some really, really painful, awful things that have led them to believe that they are not worthy of these things. They're not enough. And I mean, that's why I think taking this time to really let the people around you speak life over you. I mean, that's really what this is. The people that know you, people that you trust and respect, to allow them to say, this is what I see in you. Like, this is what I see in you, that when you're at your best, you do this, you do this, you do that. And as you start, I mean, I was recalibrating my whole identity, to be honest with you, when I was in the wake of this burnout, asking these questions, talking to these coaches, going through these processes. And I started to shift. I was like, oh, what if it's true? What if these things,
we've all been there,
you know? Yeah. What if what they're saying is true? How would I show up differently in my life if I actually believed that the kind of person that they see is who I actually am?
You can retrain that, right? And that's something I learned because I had all of those negative beliefs, and it's ingrained in your subconscious mind, right? It's something you learn as a child, right? And through affirmations, for example, one of the things I did and do now and again, I used to do it a lot before, is have like audiobooks with positive affirmations about what I'm achieving, because it's kind of in the tense that it's already happened. And I made like an audio playlist where I just play it the whole 8 hours that I'm asleep. So it's just in my ear, my headphones, and I wake up just super energized. And my subconscious mind, whilst you're asleep, it goes into, I think it's like alpha to beta. I can't remember the technical science behind it right now. But when you're asleep, your subconscious mind is still awake. So you can program it with positive affirmations. I used to just listen to these things on repeat, like even on the way to work, like on the train, like obsessed. And then every morning I would say them in the mirror as well. And then because your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between reality, the real and reality. So if you say I'm scared, you will feel scared, right? If you say and from a positive point of view, something like that, then you also can internalize that feeling as well. So it's something that I practice a lot, and be very aware of my thoughts, because you can literally make yourself sick, literally, like, as we know, like by constantly beating yourself up, talking negative thoughts, putting yourself down. And I think affirmations, you can see like playlists on YouTube, like 6-hour playlists of just like across it, and like it may sound silly, but honestly it's an absolute game changer for me to have that. And I refuse to this is a bit extreme, but I even refused to have certain friends around me that were very negative. That's
not extreme.
Like, I mean, but to them it was, right? Like, I mean, and to even family members, I was like, I'm not the guy you call every single day or week to complain about the world.
Yeah.
Like that's not, I can't do that. I need to be focused on this. And that meant letting go of a certain community of people around me to be like, I need to go here and then surround myself with other people that are on a mission, have a sense of purpose, and that are aligned with what I want to achieve as well. And I see that with HR executives. Some of the most successful CHROs I speak to on this show have amazing networks of peers around them that they tap into, that keep them going through the hard times, personally, professionally, and they have a support systems that they've built around them as well. They understand when they're in sprints and it's going to be a hard few months. They're conscious of it. They make adjustments personally, especially to do that as well. It's you have to do that, otherwise you will burn out.
100%. Been there. Yeah, been there, done that. Don't want to go back.
Yeah. So what's our message to everyone before we leave? Well, firstly, you are enough wherever you are in the world. You are enough. I want you to say it out loud. I am enough. Yeah. Right. But apart from that, what would be your parting piece of advice to everyone listening?
The thing that I would say is that, look, you've got one shot here. And if you are holding yourself back and you are muting yourself and you are letting doubt dictate what you do, you are going to end up living a life for somebody else and not for yourself. And you are worthy of living the kind of life that excites you. You're worthy of living the kind of life that fulfills you. You're worthy of living the kind of life that makes you feel alive. And you first and foremost, and I'll say this because I wrote a song about, my first song is called Somebody. And the song ends with the words, you are somebody, you matter, you are enough. And I think for each person here, even just right now, as they're wrapping up this conversation, I often do this in rooms. I was just in a room earlier this week, about 1,000 people, and I had everyone put a hand on their heart. And I said, I want you to repeat after me. And I want you to think about the most insecure, unworthy version of yourself. And I want you to speak these words to that person. I want you to say, I am somebody, I matter, and I'm enough. I want you to keep saying it. I want you to see what that feels like to say that. Notice where you're resisting saying that, and to think about what would it look like, what would it feel like in your body if you could say those words and actually believe them, and how would you show up differently in your life if you actually believed that you were somebody who mattered and that you were enough. It's a game changer.
Love it. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on the show. For everyone listening, make sure you connect with Rachel on LinkedIn. Where can I check out? Is it on the website, the music, by the way? I just like
music wherever you stream music. So Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, iTunes, all those places. Is it just your full name? Rachel Druckenmiller. Yeah, that's Rachel Druckenmiller.
So if you're wherever you're listening or watching right now, I'm gonna link all those links below. So where there's no excuse, go check out the music, connect with Rachel on LinkedIn. So I'm gonna listen after. I didn't even know. Do you know what I should do? I'm gonna have unless I get copyright strike by you. When I do the introduction of the podcast and share the clip, is have your music in the background.
Love it. That sounds great. I'm happy to
as the background music. That would be cool.
That sounds great. I'm happy. Permission granted. I'm happy to allow that. I won't reject it.
Amazing. Listen, I always enjoy our conversations, and I wish you all the best. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
Hey.